A topic that I've been meditating on for several months is a topic that I'll give some credit of inspiration to Bhakti-Vigyan Maharaj. Many of us in the West don't know him beyond his name, but he was one of the students in the first group of the GBC College. He's GBC for Russia. And he has a PhD in something or other, but you wouldn't know it from the way that he conducts himself. Except when you hear him speak, he speaks with amazing memory and detail and analysis and application, and he was attending the GBC College for the purpose of learning everything so he could take it back to Russia and do it in Russia for the devotees in Russia, the things that he was learning. So while he was there, he was asked to be one of the teachers. So he agreed. And a lot of what's on this topic for this evening, we just move the projector slightly to the right. Anatomy of anarthas. Credit for that little display goes to this young lady over here. Shatarupa knows how to do these things. I don't know how to do these things. So she made the skeleton, and I put the rest of it together. Anatomy of anarthas is what he called his seminar, and there's different definitions of anatomy straight from the dictionary. Could you try to focus and see if the focus can be sharper? There. Yeah. So, a common use of the word anatomy is what it says here. It's, the bodily organisms of humans, animals, and others, especially revealed by dissection and separation of parts. That's the primary use of the word anatomy, and the secondary use is a study of the structure or internal workings of something. And they give as an example Machiavelli's Anatomy of the Art of War. And a subtext to this dictionary definition is, in this second meaning, which is the meaning that I'm intending to use, it includes the appearance and position of the various parts, the materials from which they are composed, their locations, and their relationships with other parts. So that's the anatomy part, and then there's the anartha part, which is the negative of artha is anartha. So artha means something wanted. These are straight, just taken from folio. Key in the word anartha, so artha, and these are meanings, word for word meanings from verses where the word artha appears. Something wanted, something valued, gain, purpose or meaning, importance, and anartha is its opposite. So this is the anatomy of anarthas. Something unwanted, something that really doesn't have a good purpose, it's unimportant, it's a hindrance, it blocks spiritual progress, anartha. So the anatomy of anarthas, it's our topic. And we'll begin by reading a nice verse. There's the verse written on the screen. Taramadye Sarva Shreshta Nama Sankirtana Nir aparade nama laile paya prema dhana. Of the 9 processes of devotional service, the most important is to always chant the holy name of the Lord. If one does so, avoiding the 10 kinds of offenses, one very easily obtains the most valuable love of Godhead. And I'm going to read the purport, very nice purport, and some of it's illustrated on the text on the screen. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu gives the following directions in his Bhakti Sandarbha 270. It's long Sanskrit, translated by Srila Prabhupada in this way. Chanting the holy name is the chief means of attaining love of Godhead. This chanting or devotional service does not depend on any paraphernalia, nor on one's having taken birth in a good family. By humility and meekness one attracts the attention of Krishna. We're going to hear this again at the end of this whole presentation. That's the conclusion of other acharyas following Jiva Goswami. I'll read it again. Therefore, if one becomes very humble and meek, he can easily attain the lotus feet of Krishna. In this age of Kali, that is the fulfillment of all great sacrifices, penances, and austerities, because when one achieves ecstatic love of Godhead, he attains the complete perfection of life. Therefore, whatever one does in executing devotional service must be accompanied by the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Unquote. The chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, has been praised by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Namastakam, verse 1. O Harinama, the tips of the toes of your lotus feet are constantly being worshipped by the glowing radiance emanating from the string of gems known as the Upanishads, the crown jewels of all the Vedas. You're eternally adored by liberated souls such as Narada and Shukadev. O Harinama, I take complete shelter of you. Something's wrong in the sequence of this. Let's just see. Yeah. There's the verse. Oh, I know what happened. Okay. So there's the translation, and just breaking it down a little bit, the holy name has toes. He has the tips of his toes that go along with his lotus feet. In other words, the holy name is a person. And the holy name is constantly being worshipped by the glowing radiance emanating from the string of gems known as the Upanishads, the crown jewels of all Vedas. So the Vedas have as crown jewels, not just jewels, but crown, the best crown jewels, which have radiance, and the radiance of those crown jewels, the Upanishads, are constantly worshipping the tips of the toes of the holy name. The best of the Vedas are worshipping the holy name. And then liberated souls, Narada and Shukadev, are not interested in anything material, so that they worship the holy name means the holy name is not material. Just a very poetic way, nice way, of saying the holy name is fully transcendental. Purna Shuddho, Nitya Mukto. Oh, Harinam is a complete shelter of you. Then the next is Sanatana Goswami, quoted directly in the purport, shown up here. All glories to the all blissful holy name of Sri Krishna, which causes the devotee to give up all conventional religious duties, meditation, and worship, when somehow or other, uttered even once by a living entity, the holy name awards him liberation. The holy name of Krishna is the highest nectar. It is my very life and my only treasure. These are glories of the holy name. Then next is mentioned from Srimad Bhagavatam 2.1.11. This is Shukadeva speaking. O King, constant chanting of the holy name of Krishna after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of material enjoyment, and those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. But he's not done. Another reference from 6th Canto Bhagavatam, devotional service, beginning with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, is the ultimate religious principle for the living entity in human society. And that's not all. There's more glories of the holy name. In fact, one could write a whole book on the glories of the holy name, but this is the last one in this purport. Trinadapi Sarichena. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. That's where the purport ends. The final sentence is, regarding the 10 offenses in chanting the holy name, one may refer to Adi Lila chapter 8, verse 24. A key message in Jiva Goswami's, the first text that's quoted in the purport, twice mentioned is humility and meekness. regardless of birth and other activities in this or previous lives. If one becomes very humble and meek, he can easily attain the lotus feet of Krishna in this age of Kali. By humility and meekness, one attracts the attention of Krishna. He speaks it twice. So that's a theme that runs through all of this, specifically with reference to the anatomy of anarthas and the opposite of attaining the lotus feet of Krishna. In Brihat Bhagavatamrita, Sanatana Goswami makes particular reference of these features of genuine humility. That although one has exceptional capacity to serve in a particular way, still one feels not very capable. One has good capabilities or qualities or characteristics or traits or something, and one feels one doesn't have them. And it's not low self-esteem, it's transcendental humility. And accompanied with that is a trait or a pervasive character that one introspects, aiming at self-improvement. They go well together, these two. That's a starting point for the topic that we're going to discuss for 4 evenings. And we're going to start this evening with discussing from several perspectives, starting with Haridas Thakur. There's, in this painting or drawing, there's Haridas Thakur in the midst of assembly of Vaishnavas in Jagannath Puri. This is a painting, actually it's a color illustration, this is a black and white of it, that was commissioned by Maharaj Prataparudra, who is prostrating himself at Narendra Sarovar. That's the Sarovar over here. And there's Gadadhar Pandit reciting Srimad Bhagavatam before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and the other great personalities that resided with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy and so on. They're also pictured here. So Haridas Thakur is, of course, the Acharya for the chanting of the holy name, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur chose to write a book spoken by Haridas Thakur to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the book called Harinam Chintamani, where chapter by chapter the message of and the method of chanting of the holy name and how to effectively chant the holy name is described, and avoiding the 10 offenses as mentioned, so that one can come to the pure chanting. We read some of the glories just right from the purport of this Chaitanya Charitamrita verse. That's the sum and substance of the first chapter. The second chapter is understanding the glories of the holy name, how to receive or accept the holy name. Emphasis goes to receiving from a qualified person. The conditions of the qualified person, the conditions of the receiver from the qualified person. And chapter 3 is then once one begins chanting, there's considerations of chanting that's less than perfect or less than pure. Namabhas chanting. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, through Haridas Thakur, speaks of this abhas in many different ways, but keeping it really simple. The holy name is compared to the sun, and ignorance is compared to mist, and clouds in the sky are compared to anarthas, or anarthas are compared to clouds. So if this in the sky of the heart, that poetic imagery is being used, if there are clouds of anarthas and mist of ignorance, then the fullness of the holy name will not be experienced by the chanter. So then somebody might wonder, how is that possible? Krishna's name is all this wonderful, glorious position and so completely powerful and so endearing. How is it possible that we don't have a taste for the chanting of the holy name? And the answer is very simple. We make offenses against the holy name. So, following Jiva Goswami's writings and Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings, and you'll see I've done a rather comprehensive or 360 search of what our acharyas have to say on this topic, but particularly Bhaktivinoda Thakur indicates that offense or aparad stems out of ignorance, and he uses the term tattva vibhrama. So we'll see how he addresses this topic. Remember that the title is The Anatomy of Anarthas. But before you have anartha, you have an offense. And the offense results in anartha, something unwanted in the heart. There's a direct relationship. In some cases, the holy name will appear in full force in the heart of the chanter, but in other cases, mist of ignorance and clouds of anarthas will minimize the effect of the name on the chanter. So Harinam Chintamani states like this: the holy name, like the sun, dispels the darkness of illusion. However, sometimes mist or clouds cover the sun from the viewer, so that only a portion of the light comes through. In the same way, when ignorance and anarthas predominate, the sun of the holy name becomes covered, and only a portion of the full effect of the name is felt. So it becomes pretty obvious then, we need to get rid of that mist. So we need to get rid of the clouds, so the fullness of the sun can be experienced. We need to get rid of ignorance, and we need to get rid of offenses, so that, and the result of those offenses, the anarthas, so that the fullness of the holy name can be experienced. Once they are removed, the sun of the holy name shines brilliantly once more and bestows upon the devotee love of Godhead. So that's our goal, and we have to strive towards that. A nice verse saying the same thing is reference from Vishnu Dharma. A heart contaminated with passion does not concentrate on the Lord. A swan never develops attraction for muddy water. A person indulging in lies cannot praise the Lord. The moon, covered by clouds, does not remove darkness. There's the moon covered by clouds. And it may even look like the clouds are luminous. But the clouds aren't luminous. It's the luminary behind the clouds, and not even the fullness of that luminary because of the clouds. And we get distracted by the coverings, the contaminations of heart, and become, unfortunately, absorbed in them. Now here's a quote from Bhakti Sandarbha. There's a whole section. I cut and pasted it from Bhanu Swami's translation. For those of you that would like a copy can be sent to you. From text 152 to 162. Just Bhanu Swami's translation, because my observation, or it seems pretty clear, Jiva Goswami is the Acharya who the subsequent Acharyas followed. So what the other Acharyas write follows what Jiva Goswami writes. They have the language is slightly different, the approach is slightly different, but the message is essentially the same. And so this is a nice quote on this topic exactly of chanting purely and the obstacles for chanting purely. O Brahmana, when pronounced, properly or not, it appears on the voice, walks on the path of the memory, or enters the ears, if it is not stopped by offenses. A single utterance of the holy name of the Lord carries one beyond the world of birth and death. However, if the chanter commits offenses, or if he chants to attain wealth, followers, or happiness of the material body, he will be thrown into the world of birth and death, and his chanting will not quickly bring the desired results. Pretty strong reference from Padma Purana. There's a whole section in Padma Purana, as indicated, speaking about the holy names. This is a stotra, Namaparad Bhajana stotra from Padma Purana. A lot of glorification of the holy name. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur takes these messages and says it in his Acharya-like way. And that is, he takes a section that describes what's the origin of aparads. I'm going to show later. Other of our acharyas say it slightly differently, but they say essentially the same thing. According to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, aparad stems from out of ignorance. And he uses the term tattva vibrama. And tattva vibrama is used in the, just like Jiva Tattva and Vishnu Tattva and Shakti Tattva and different tattvas. Guru Tattva, tat is a pronoun that means that, and tva means ness, thatness. And so whatever the thing is, the science of, or the spiritual knowledge about higher truth, or absolute truth, or those things in this world that are spiritual, and not having a proper understanding of those things that are spiritual, then one is in illusion. Oh, vibrama, tattva vibrama. Illusion about spiritual knowledge. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur indicates they're sequential. What are the different categories of tattva vibrama? Well, not those things that are in this world that are spiritual. One of them is the soul, our own self. Swa tattva brahma, illusion about one's own spiritual identity. Para tattva brahma, illusion about God. Sadhya sadhana brahma, illusion regarding the subjects of sadhana and prema bhakti. And virodhi Vishaya Brahma, illusion regarding subjects unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. This is like abundant. We don't have specific, proper, true understanding of things that are detrimental, unfavorable to bhakti. We may dilly-dally with them or absorb ourselves in them. Ignorance. One of the refrains that Prabhupada would say over and over again is, the root cause of all suffering is ignorance. In this case, he's saying the root of all offenses, aparad, starts with ignorance. And then from ignorance comes the next in the line, which is material desire. So, we'll go back. We become bewildered when our ignorance of those things that are spiritual become covered. And then when those things that are spiritual become covered, then material desires start to rise. And he indicates the material desires are not just the worldly ones, there's otherworldly ones, and mystic perfections even includes liberation as a material desire, meaning specifically apart from the happiness of Krishna. And then, in sequence, aparad will come. So next in his list is asat Krishna, material desires or thirst for the impermanent. But before at least in this series, Bhajana Rahasya, if they're sequential, first is we have to be in ignorance of what is spiritual, and then we thirst for something material. Because we want happiness, and that which is spiritual happiness becomes covered, so we go for material happiness, or strengthening of material desire. And then from the strengthening of material desire comes offenses of all different varieties, and I didn't detail them because they're explained very nicely in many places. And then in this particular text, Bhajana Rahasya, Hridaya Dorbalyam follows. That even when we know what is to be done, we don't do it. There's weakness of heart. From Harinam Chintamani, he's made these distinctions. Attachment to trifling things unrelated to Krishna. Deceit or fault finding. Kuntinata specifically means fault finding, but we'll see. I put this in a little bit larger letters because it's going to come up again and again and again. It's in Jiva Goswami's list. So please remember this one. He's including it in Hridaya Dorbalyam, but it's quite okay that the sequence goes in some different order. Matsarya, envy, and longing for position and fame, swapratishtata. These are weaknesses of heart, and they follow behind anarthas. So let's do it again. See how strong your memory is. The chanting of the holy name does not happen in its fullness because of mist of ignorance and anarthas in the heart. The anarthas have 4 categories that arise sequentially. The first of them is tattva vibrama, ignorance of spiritual truth. And following that tattva vibrama, material desire, asat trishna. Following the asat trishna, aparad. So aparad has as its root ignorance. Tattva vibrama. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's analysis. And then hridaya dorbalyam. Categories of anarthas. But just for appreciation's sake, not to distract you, but for appreciation's sake. During this past weekend, I was speaking on the prayers of Queen Kunti, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on verse 35, her prayer, where the previous ones is, how is it, who can understand how the unborn is born? It's a contradiction. Some people say this, and some people say that, and some people say the other thing. And finally, he says, you appear, some people say, you appear to deliver the process of devotional service, and by so doing, remove the darkest of ignorance of those souls, beloved souls in this world, who have forgotten you. So Vishwanath makes this commentary. This is the real reason for the Lord's appearance. First, there is ignorance, avidya, and then desire, kama, and then action, karmadi. So I use some of the same images for this presentation. over the weekend. So first comes ignorance, and then comes material desire, and then comes fruitive activities. But fruitive activities, not for the purpose of satisfaction of Krishna. So one becomes covered with the mist of ignorance due to this fruitive activity program. And then if one takes up some kind of spiritual activity with maintaining that mentality, then offenses also come. So the ignorance he's speaking specifically is ignorance of actions for attaining prema, ignorance of our real self-interest, and which is the self-interest of Krishna. And if one does take up that process properly, one can see the lotus feet of the Lord. That's the next verse. By the proper engagement in devotional service, one can see the lotus feet of the Lord, and by seeing the lotus feet of the Lord, one attains prema. Now, two other slides just comparing those. List of 4 is from Bhajana Rahasya. He does a slightly different listing in Harinam Chintamani, and slightly different sequence also. It's a list of 3. But he says these are categories of anarthas: thirst for material objects, miserliness of heart, and offense. Categories of anarthas. And in Madhurya Kandamani, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a list of 4 from which anarthas arise. Previous sinful, previous pious activities, offenses, and those arising from bhakti, when one tries to become an enjoyer of the little success of bhakti. 1, 2, and 4 have all to do with being a separate enjoyer. And offenses is the most difficult, and therefore gets the most attention, both in Madhurya Kandamani and in Jiva Goswami's Bhakti Sandarbha. So those were categories of anarthas. Now is definition. Oh, not anarthas. Aparad, definition of offense, from which anarthas arise. This is a functional definition. That is, offense is something which blocks spiritual power. And the etymology of the word, breaking it apart, apa, aradhana. Apa is in English, it is similar to the English word apart, so that which takes us away. Apa, and aradhana. Aradhana is worship or love, the same root as Radharani's name. She's not spoken directly in the Bhagavatam by Shukadeva Goswami, but the same word. She's the best of the worshippers of Krishna. Aradhana. So apa aradhana means that which takes us away from our mood of love and worship of Krishna. So this is a functional definition of aparad. It's that which takes us away from our natural instinct, our natural spiritual inclination to love and serve Krishna. Functionally, it blocks spiritual power. And that's kind of a curious thing. So, here's the sequence. We come, according to Jiva Goswami, he's very specific about it. Offenses come, and the contaminations of heart that go with those offenses carry from previous lifetimes. We enter this world with a whole stock, a whole bunch of baggage of such propensity. offenses from past life. And so even when we begin our devotional service, it's difficult from previous contamination to perform devotional service properly. And when we don't perform devotional service properly, we don't experience the result that we're aspiring for, or that it says devotional service is capable of delivering. Jiva Goswami, again, say it again, is very clear about this. It's not, some of us have a problem. Everyone, without exception. And for that reason, we engage in devotional practice again and again and again. In other words, sadhana bhakti. In his Bhakti Sandarbha, when he makes this point, Jiva Goswami makes reference to one of the very first verse in the fourth section of Vedanta Sutra. Now, I'm not a scholar of Vedanta Sutra, but I know this much. It follows the Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana sequence. There's 4 parts. The first 2 are the most lengthy, and they deal with Sambandha. And the 3rd part deals with Abhideya, and the 4th part deals with Prayojana. This is the very first aphorism of Vedanta Sutra, the 4th part dealing with Prayojana, which says, Avati Adhikaranam. Now, Jiva Goswami was an acharya before Baladev Vidyabhusan came along, chronologically. But in his Govinda Bhasya, obviously, Baladev had read Bhakti Sandarbha, because he makes reference to it specifically. He presents in his commentary this particular sutra and presents a doubt. Should one repeat hearing and other prescribed processes? I'm taking out directly Bhadaswami's commentary of Govinda Bhasya. And the opposing party says no, there should be no repetition, since one should see the Lord by once performing hearing, etc., just as one attains Swarga by once performing an Agnishtoma sacrifice. Apparently there were people during Baladev Vidyabhusan's time that said like that, you don't need to do regular sadhana. But he refers to Vedanta Sutra to indicate you must. And within his commentary, Avatir Asakrit Upadeshat, which means sadhana sadhanas should be repeated, since the scriptures teach that one must engage many times. That's his translation, Bhadaswami's translation. Avatir Asakrit Upadesha is a good verse to remember. Avatir Asakrit Upadeshat. And here's the meaning. Repetition is avriti. So see avriti, adhikaranam, and avritir asakrit upadeshat. Repetition is necessary. Why? Because scriptures say that the process should be done many times. He refers to Chandogya Upanishad, where Shvetaketu said 9 times this Tattvam Asi. The very famous phrase that Shankaracharya took as one of his Mahavakyas, and he said it again and again. And Chandogya Upanishad says it again and again. So if there's some sadhana, we say it again and again. Just like it may be very core, but you say it again and again, so it'll give emphasis to it, and so it'll sink in. Just like one of the core messages of Bhagavad Gita is, we're not this body. And how many times did Prabhupada say in his writings and in his lectures, you're not this body. So many times people say, I've heard it already, what else? So why is it said again and again? Because it's necessary to say it again and again. Scriptures enjoined, we say it again and again. Why? Because the power of the message is blocked by the mist of ignorance and the clouds of anarthas. Our hearts are dirty. And so it's necessary to say it again and again. We don't disagree. I've said this on several occasions, but I was really astonished when in Y2K they did all kinds of surveys, and one of the ones that I saw was they surveyed people, how many people believe in the soul. Some very large percentage, 85% of the people surveyed believe in the soul, and then believe in the life after death. He didn't say reincarnation, he just said life after death. The soul goes beyond this lifetime. Another very large percentage, not quite that same size. And I remember reading that, thinking, how many people, they believe it, but do they live their lives that way? They believe it, but they don't live their lives that way. Not the opposite. So they don't live according to their convictions. What's that? There's some not very nice names about it. So repetition, avatir asakrit upadesha, repetition is necessary. At the bottom, again, this is right from Govinda Bhashya. Though it is said that the meaning of Scripture is stated once, such repetition is not a contradiction to this. The injunction to state something once is related to results which cannot be seen in this life, since the results of vidya, which is bhakti, seeing the Lord, is a result that can be seen in this life. Hearing and other processes should be repeated till the result is attained. Just as one repeatedly beats rice until the rice is visibly free of the husk. Sadhana is necessary. Although the glories of the holy name, now just summarizing the message, the glories of the holy name are there, heard in chapter 1 or of Harinam Chintamani, or heard in the first 2 verses of Shikshastakam. And even Lord Chaitanya says, although I know all these glories, I have no attraction. So then repetition is necessary. And then one more message for, this is the last slide, by the way, this is it for the evening. Patanjali Muni, in his Yoga Sutras, gives 3 conditions that are necessary for something to fall into the category of sadhana. And there's the verse, taken directly from his Yoga Sutras. Sato dirga kala, for a prolonged period of time, and nairantarya, uninterruptedly, and satkara, or with reverence. So the translation is at the bottom. Practice becomes firmly established when it has been cultivated uninterruptedly and with devotion over a prolonged period of time. So this message is how to perform our chanting, our sadhana bhakti, in such a way it's not mechanical. If we do it mechanical, then according to Patanjali Muni, it's not sadhana, because it's missing item number 3. We may do it for a long period of time, and we may do it without interruption. But it's mechanical when there isn't the satkara, reverence or devotion. That means, along with the activity as we're doing it, we have some faith or some confidence, some certainty that, for example, the holy name of Krishna is Krishna. Not just we know how to recite the verse, but the holy name of Krishna is Krishna. Avinatam Nama Namino, we know the verse. But chanting in such a way that we're conscious and confident and faithful, and with our attention is present with the name, because it's not mechanical, because we have confidence, we have reverence in the activity itself. It will restore our consciousness of Krishna. It will clear the covering of this of ignorance and the clouds of anarthas. The holy name has that power. But on the other side, it will remain mechanical, our chanting will remain mechanical without this particular third item. And drop any one of the other items and it's also very problematic. Somebody gets a very severe illness, and because of that very severe illness, it's very difficult to resume their chanting. I've shared this with in japa retreats. Niranjan Maharaj and several of us were attending a japa retreat together, and just amongst the senior devotees that were attending the japa retreat, we were talking about chanting with feeling, and he just immediately opened his computer and shared with us a letter that he had just written but hadn't yet sent to a disciple who was one of the leading book distributors in Russia, and something happened with their health. They had a very severe health crisis, and they were hospitalized and unable to do anything, and for a long time. But the letter they had just written him was saying, you'd be very happy to hear that I'm now chanting 6 rounds a day, and I'm looking forward to getting back to my 16 rounds a day. It's a struggle, it's very difficult, but I'm very determined. So one letter is, go for it. But his letter was, don't worry about, for now, because you're still in a weak condition, don't worry about you've taken a vow and you're not keeping your vow, because that was in his letter. But just focus on chant with feeling, and automatically you'll come to the position of resuming your 16 rounds, but then in a quality way. It's a very nice answer. Words of encouragement. That's this satkara, where the quantitative is nice, and so we don't do a trade-off we just do qualitative and don't worry about quantitative, or quantitative and don't worry about qualitative. We do both. But we do both. We have to be concerned with the intention, or the consciousness that we invest in all of our devotional activities. Deity worship, association with devotees, studying of scripture, cooking for Krishna. Anything that we do, the consciousness that we invest in that activity, again circling back around to what Jiva Goswami wrote in Bhakti Sandarbha Anuched 270, quoted in this Chaitanya Charitamrita purport, that the humility and meekness attracts Krishna. The consciousness that we're carrying as we're engaging in our primary activity, the chanting of the holy name, is of utmost importance, so that it would be counted as sadhana, and the kind of sadhana specifically that will carry us to the goal. Very interesting. One clock says it's 7:30, another says it's 12 after 8. Huh? So the one on the right is the right time. It's 12 after 8.
16.
Huh?
16 after.
Okay. It's 16 after 8. So we're going to end and see if there's any discussion here. Yes?
I was just trying to think about what is the most common offenses that are committed, and I think of one that mostly comes up is offending other Vaishnavas.
Oh yeah.
And
it's number one on the list too.
yeah. So I was wanting to know, I guess, what defines what is an offense? Because I was just thinking, for example, somebody in your position or in, like as a GBC or somebody in a managerial position, they have to make decisions, and then there's a whole set of people that doesn't like your decision, there's a whole set of people that do like it, and then those people that don't like it are offended, quote unquote offended. But is that actually an offense?
No. As far as managerial decisions and liking or not liking the managerial decision, those that don't like the managerial decision are not offenders. And speak or act or both to try to modify the opinion is not an offense in itself. Largely the offense has to do with the consciousness behind the activity and the manner in which the message is delivered. Now, some people, for example, the manner in which the message is delivered, some people are very socially conscious, and they're trained nicely, and their qualities are nice, and they know how to say something nicely. And there's some people that are harsh, and they just don't know how to say something nicely. And that's not in and of itself an offense, because they speak harshly, to the wall. That's in and of itself not an offense. Those persons need some training, and they probably need some fences around them, so the areas that they move in are limited, because the other person who is spoken to harshly may feel offended. It's a subtle. The response to your question, a lot depends on the consciousness of the person on the receiving end and the consciousness of the person on the giving end, not just the liking or not liking of a managerial decision. So there's subtle things to be considered in all of that. What is offense and what's not offense. You want to go further into it? Or that's good enough?
That's okay, but I had a question about the first offense.
Okay.
Blaspheming devotees. So this idea of offending other Vaishnavas would fall under that category. Out of the 10 offenses, it would fall under
Sadhana.
Yes. So could you define more clearly what it is to blaspheme, because I feel like when I try to think about devotees interacting with each other, they don't, I mean, most of the time I don't think devotees really intentionally are speaking badly about someone. I could be wrong, but I feel like people get offended a lot, but it's not like people are specifically wanting to, speak badly about someone
Well,
else.
there's degrees, and it's going to come up in the next section. There's degrees of speaking badly. So, part of I just, someone can say, because someone is gruff or harsh by nature, whatever they say is harsh or gruff by nature, and that doesn't mean that's offensive, because that's their nature. It's just, they're not sweet, they're harsh, or they're rough. But if you, there's degrees. So like if you call, I'm thinking now of something that Braja Bihari said in his role as a conflict mediation and resolution person. What's the most hurtful thing is when someone questions the integrity of another. Not the behavior, was it the right decision or the wrong decision? But your integrity is called, the sincerity of your purpose to serve Krishna is brought into question. Wow. At least on the side of the person who's hearing that, it hurts. And the person who hears, even you may not like the behavior or the decision, but you especially don't like calling the person's sincerity in question. That's where it gets offensive. In a very serious way. So put it in the positive arena, specifically because you brought up the question of managerial decisions, because that's not the only area where devotees get into issues with one another, but having wholesome disagreement with the intention of let us work this out until we have that which is going to please Krishna as our objective. That's good. It's not offensive. Speaking clearly and strongly a particular perspective that you hold and have some conviction in. At the same time, another party is doing the same thing, and try to, the best is to try to understand one another and at least strive to find not like a compromised middle ground kind of thing, but something that evolves over a period of time that becomes like luminous and clear to at least consensus, if not all, of the parties involved. So, what I'm saying here, Gopal Bhatta calls it wholesome arguing, or something like that. Spiritual arguing. Where, what we want is the best. We have different views on what the best is or how to achieve it. So we can have different views and vigorously discuss it. Respectfully though. When respect is dropped, then it gets into the offensive territory. So it can happen in the home. It can happen, devotees doing some common service together. It can happen between this group of devotees that do this service and that group of devotees do that service and have disagreements with each other. So when respect diminishes or is gone, then it's offensive, even if you speak sweetly. It's this, whatever, there's a term for it, passive aggressive or something like that. Yes.
Maharaj, sometimes the offenses are made without real intention. So, some offenses we do.
Yes, that happens.
So, how to.
Well, if it's unintentional, you try to act more, internally try to act more in consistency with your intentions. That requires purity of heart. And then if there has something that's been done that's unintentional, then you make amends for that unintentional. And sometimes it's just read incorrectly. Your intention was the opposite of what someone is saying that your intention was. I think we've all been in that circumstance. We go out of our way to do something for another person and they feel offended. Because they read what you were doing was something other than what you were doing or the intention of what you were doing. It's like really puzzling. And that's not even unintentional, it's like misread. I know what I do in that circumstance, I apologize. It's by something, somehow or other, by something that I did or said or didn't do or didn't say, you felt hurt. I feel sorry for that, I apologize. I'm not exactly saying guilty with an explanation, I'm saying, I'm sorry. Then you feel that pain. I'm happy to offer an explanation. But and along with my apology, if you want to hear the explanation, it may help. But unintentional, you address them also.
But is that an aparad?
No. It's not in the same category of that leaves something unwanted within your heart. There's a wonderful explanation given in Bhakti Ratnakar, maybe you've heard this before, of Rupa Goswami was chanting. And when he was chanting, he was so immersed in chanting that the pastimes of Krishna were literally being enacted within his heart. You familiar with this? Yes? So as the Leela between Radha and Krishna was progressing, something very funny happened and he laughed. And when he laughed, his body laughed. And as he laughed aloud, an elderly sadhu was passing by, who was lame and hobbling, and the sadhu felt that Rupa Goswami was laughing at him because he's lame and hobbling. And he felt offended. And he was how could Rupa Goswami, the most exalted Vaishnava in the whole of Vrindavan, the follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, laugh at an old man? His mind was very disturbed. So he went to Sanatana Goswami, the elder brother, and told him the whole story. And Sanatana said, well, my brother comes every day, and I'll explore this, I'll get back to you. So Rupa Goswami came, and Rupa Goswami started sharing with him what had happened that day. He was having this wonderful experience while chanting, a wonderful pastime, and then something very humorous happened, and all of a sudden my meditation broke. So I tried to enter into that state of meditation, but I couldn't enter into the state of meditation. So Sanatana put it together and said, the reason is that sadhu that was passing by thought that you were laughing at him. He felt offended, although you meant no offense. And there was no offense. But he felt an offense. That's what blocked your meditation. So go find the sadhu, tell him what happened, and ask for his his forgiveness. So when Rupa Goswami did that, the sadhu was, oh, I am the offender. How could I think that you could laugh at an old crippled personality? Even having such a thought about you, it's my offense. So please forgive me for my offense. And everything was nice again. But offense is, it's not a scare tactic, it's something real. So even those that are unintentional, if it comes to your attention that someone has felt offended, you address it. That's exactly what Sanatana Goswami advised. And there may be some impediment. So what to speak of, coarser people than the sadhus of Vrindavan. Yeah.
Sometimes when we get the opportunity to followers or sometimes the person can tell that sometimes don't come to know.
Correct.
So
what to do?
Yeah.
Prabhupada was asked that question. He was in Vrindavan. He was at Radha Damodar temple. He was giving class in nectar devotion. And the question was asked about offenses that unknowingly performed. Yeah, you heard about this. I'm sure I've offended so many devotees. What should I do about those devotees? I don't even know who they are, or where they are, or what I did. And then Prabhupada's reply was, therefore we say every day in all of our temples, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa, but don't do it mechanically, do it devotionally, the same, satkara, regularly. Okay? There's a question here. We'll get over to you. I see.
What if sometimes I get involved in the temple, in a talk with somebody else about what's wrong with the temple, or what's wrong, what we are doing wrong, or what's wrong with this or what we are doing wrong, how should we do it, is this offensive?
No. Again, it's like Mukunda's question. If you're seeking for improvement, that's good. If you're just seeking to find fault, that's not good. Kutinati is one of the categories of aparad. Right there on the list. So, what's the difference? One is the mood of service, and the other is the mood of criticism. What do you think? Well, such discussion is good. You look within yourself first and say, how can I improve? And then you're with a friend and you say, how can we improve? If it's just self-deprecation, that's not, what's that going to do? Or with your friend about him, you're wrong, you're bad. How's that going to help your friend? And then, you expand the circle. Or, in the home, besides in the temple. The mood of service. I wish to see one of the lessons that Anutama presents in his leadership course is when you give thoughtful feedback to another. So it's best, it'll be most effective, and Vaishnava-like, with the sequences appreciation, room for improvement, appreciation. So if you're going to have some discussion about, the temple or ISKCON or whatever, start with appreciation, and then not like this is wrong or that's wrong, room for improvement, because that's the purpose is of feedback or of analyzing is how can we improve. And anybody that's approached with, I'd like to participate in this effort for improvement, not just like, if you're smart, you listen to what I say. If you don't listen to what I say, you're not smart. And walk away. It's the mode of service. The mode of together, let us improve. That is not offensive. The other is just making a remark and passing some foul air and leaving the place. So I saw your hand, but I saw her hand before. So the previous slide. Okay, but you're after her. Go ahead.
I was thinking about the part of taking offense.
Part of
taking offense.
Taking offense.
So that also is like going to hinder progress for both. It's also an offense.
Yeah. Well, it impedes progress for sure.
I see that in me. I see that kind of tendency.
You take offense.
Sometimes I feel like it's just unnecessarily taking offense, and then I regret after that, but then it's already done. I misunderstood or often taken
The
offense.
regret afterwards, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that's tapasya for a Vaishnava. To regret mistakes, something like that. Now, there's different things that you can do. It depends upon, how frequent it is and how intense it is. So I think it's especially important with those that you interact with most closely on a regular basis. Though you clear things with those persons, however many times you may have to say, I felt, and then I felt, bad that I felt offended or felt hurt. Sometimes you just share, just like be transparent. Let's say, the person's guiding you in your Krishna consciousness and your good husband. Probably that those are the most likely places where it comes. So then just, to work on that tendency is you just express it. Not, ad nauseum, but, just say, I'm doing this for my purification. Because I want to not go there. So please permit me to share this with you. I did it again. I went there and then I felt bad that I went there again. I want the strength to overcome this tendency, this repetition. Transparent acknowledgement helps. Alright? Here we go. Here comes the microphone.
I was just trying to copy that.
Oh, okay, that's it.
Sorry.
Okay. Yes, up on the stairs.
So, Maharaj, during last year's Christmas retreat, you mentioned this point.
Which point?
That only it eliminates the offenses within oneself and also gives the power to overcome the offenses, something like that. Correctly. So I was wondering, Maharaj, just seeing unto myself, sometimes I get this overwhelming feeling that some tendency in me which I was not aware of, something which I see coming up newly in me. Sometimes I have this doubt that it's something that is there dormant and starting to fructify, or I'm acquiring something from acquiring new tendencies, that tendency is due to some offenses, something like that.
Well, you got me really confused. But if I've understood you correctly, it really doesn't matter whether it's new or old. Old that's surfacing or new that's new. It's not so critical. If it's something that's unwanted, something that repeats itself like she's describing, something that repeats itself, that's something you should pay special attention to. It's deeper seated, deeper rooted, and something that's more important than something that's very transient. So especially if it comes again and again, pay special attention. But otherwise, whether it's old or new, is not so important. Don't get distracted in sorting that one out. Stay focused on taking care of the deeper seated issues that are coverings of the pure holy name. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I tried to explain the question and it's not very clear for me. We're especially dealing with devotees and even now how ISKCON is moving, and we're also encouraging leadership to take training and it's more of a material skill that we're trying to
More of a what skill?
Material skill.
No.
Like communication.
Why do you say material skill? I'm objecting. That which is used in Krishna's service is not a material skill. Okay, sorry for that.
No, I'm really corrected there. How much one should endeavor to acquire the skill like communication, effective communication, versus
what?
I mean, I'm trying to understand, is it something that's internal or external? Because when I try to increase my communication skill so that I do not have conflict with others or like miscommunications and stuff like that, versus, and that's where my lack of clarity is.
Okay, I think I got it. I'm not sure, but I think I got it. The priority at the beginning, in the middle, in the end, skill or no skill, the priority is Krishna should be pleased. If that priority is in place and maintains being in place, then it becomes very important to please Krishna, because that's the priority. Now, here in Naperville, we have a little growing community, and new people are coming. New people are looking to the experienced people, hopefully. Otherwise, we're just inviting more turmoil. Instead of growth, we're inviting turmoil. New people come in with different ideas, different minds, different senses, different conceptions, and it's disunity, not unity. It's chaos instead of working together. So it becomes very important for pleasing Krishna, not just for organization, but for pleasing Krishna. So if that's in the foreground, then exactly using the words that you use, not creating a disturbance in my interaction with others, but creating harmony while respecting differences by proper communication. And the first part of communication, rule, is trying to understand others before trying to be understood.
Yes.
And that's not, you can say it's material, or you can say it's human, but it's Krishna conscious. Prabhupada was able to understand his audience because he had that gift from Krishna, and he spoke according to his audience. Yeah?
Thank you.
It's spiritual communication. The skill, the art of communicating effectively so as to please Krishna. Part of pleasing Krishna is they don't create a disturbance amongst the devotees. Yes.
Hare as my mind is so wide and
your mind is wild. Your wife is smiling. Now she's covering her mouth.
So, from the morning till evening, we associate at work, and we see so many things. It is an association. There may be thoughts that generate in the mind, but you do not act on them.
Okay.
So,
You're saying bad thoughts.
yeah, any thought.
Any thoughts? You have to act on something.
So, bad thoughts. So, we rationalize and then we don't act upon that. So, having generated those thoughts in the mind, is it also an offense?
Fortunately, two-part answer. Fortunately, in the age of Kali, no. We're responsible for what we do, not for what we think. The second part is, however, if that thought dwells in the mind, then in sequence, thinking, feeling, willing comes acting. Commonly, what's inside comes outside. So you may not act on the thought or speak about that thought, but in course of time it's going to come out. Even, non-verbally or non-actively, just, an attitude. So best to replace the bad thought with a Krishna thought. Consider how to take strength from Krishna or intelligence from Krishna and make the situation improve, particularly in a Krishna-centered way, pleasing Krishna way. And you may not have the answer to that question, but if you think that way, then you're protecting yourself from the bad thought, not just like parking it over there in the parking lot and then it shows up again in your front lawn. And then again and again, because such tendencies repeat themselves. You're Krishna's servant. So be Krishna's servant wherever you are, in the workplace, at home, in the marketplace, in the civic world, at the temple, in your dreams. You're Krishna's servant. You cultivate that consciousness wherever you are. Anything on the ladies' side? Yes. Yes.
Last time I remember you talked about this offenses, and it was very helpful for me. And wasn't it more of the moment I feel like I feel that I was too, I started asking forgiveness to whoever the Vaishnava was. So I thought, is it okay, should I do that, with the time with the offense also?
No. Then you'll be busy all day long.
Should I be waiting till I feel like this is really very big offense?
Well, not just don't hook it up to the offense scale. If it hits a 10, then you definitely got to do something. But you know what hopefully there's some common sense operating and things that are significant, especially if you're like this example given over here. If you're carrying a feeling, either you did something or someone did something to you, you're carrying a feeling in either way. It's not, most important is don't do it again. Besides, making an apology if you did something or said something. It's don't do it again. That's the best apology.
And because of the ignorance, when sometimes I really want to ask for forgiveness, I do ask forgiveness, but it is something like sitting in my heart.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. When it's sitting in your heart, then you got to do something. whether it's even can be small. Don't let it sit and fester. You got something? No? Okay. Okay. I think you're done. Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. One thing I saw in the slides, Anarthas arise from Bhakti.
What's that?
Anarthas arise from Bhakti.
Anarthas arise from bhakti? Oh, okay.
So is it like committing offenses?
No, that's not what it's speaking about. That's number 3. Number 4 is when I have a little success in devotion, I may try to be the enjoyer of that little success in devotion. I may try to labha, puja, and pratishtha, become the enjoyer in that way. It's similar to another topic that he mentions, but it's not the same.